Hello everybody, this is Bird Brain, where here we are nerdy for the birdies. The Philadelphia Eagles are taking on the Washington Commanders in the NFC Championship for the opportunity to be the NFC East team to make the Super Bowl. This is a huge game and a lot to talk about, so let's get into our breakdown as we have been doing the last couple of weeks. So we'll start with the Eagles offense versus the Commanders defense. And the first point here is the biggest question on everyone's minds in Philadelphia and also very likely in Washington. How healthy is Jalen Hurts? We saw in the Rams game he injured his knee. They never disclosed what he specifically did. It's probably just a knee sprain based on the nature of the injury. I don't think it'd be a bone bruise because he didn't really hit it. It just got caught and pinned awkwardly. Nothing tore, obviously, because then we'd be in real trouble. But this is going to be interesting because so much of what this offense does is predicated around Jalen Hurts. I mean, obviously you have the passing game, but his mobility opens up opportunities, especially in the run game. And if Jalen is not healthy and unable to move, and Washington figures that out, they are going to be able to take away aspects of the run game. The Eagles have run the ball very well against Washington, and their run defense is not very good. They gave up 200 yards to the Lions. In the two matchups against Saquon, he's averaged around 148 yards and 2 touchdowns in each of the 2 games he's played. So clearly he's going to be a factor, but a lot of that stems from how healthy Jalen is. If you remember in the last matchup, when Saquon, after Jalen left the game, Saquon broke one long run and then for the rest of the day was just contained. He didn't really do much of anything. And, a lot of it then fell on Kenny Pickett and the rest happened the way it happened. This is a huge opportunity here to try to see how healthy Jalen is. He's rested. We've seen clips of him in practice. I think he looks fine, or at least fine enough. Maybe not 100%, but I think he's mobile enough. We'll see. I would love to see on the opening drive the Eagles call a couple RPOs, see if he gets to pull one and see how healthy he looks running. If he looks good running, we're in business. And then now he's a threat. Like I said, obviously, in the first matchup, Jalen was healthy. They did end up winning that game pretty convincingly. So we'll see what happens. My next point is, can the Eagles' pass game take advantage of the secondary? Washington's secondary has some nice names on it, but their secondary isn't infallible. We saw in the last matchup, A.J. Brown just torched Marshawn Lattimore all game. He was drawing PIs, he was getting catches. They were not afraid to throw at him. AJ's been extremely quiet in the playoffs. This is not I wouldn't say their secondary is bad per se, but they're not like the best secondary. We saw against the Lions, they gave up 300 yards. They gave up yards to Tampa. This is a very beatable secondary defensively. And the Eagles haven't leaned on their pass game that much, but especially depending on Jalen's health, you're going to probably have to use it a little bit more in this game to win. Jalen has not thrown a passing touchdown against Washington this year. He hasn't really needed to, obviously. But this is a big game, and they're going to need all the points they can get. Washington's not a team that you can just kind of look at and say, oh, well, if we hold them to 17 points, we're good. They're not really that kind of football team. They're going to score a lot of points. They're also going to give up a lot of points, and you have to kind of just match up with them. We saw very quickly what happened to Detroit. They just couldn't keep up, and that was the end of the game. So the Eagles have to be able to keep up, and one way to be able to do so is the pass game. So if they can be efficient, right, with the passing game and take advantage of opportunities, I think there are shots to be had there. I think there's plays to be made there. I think, especially with the passing game for the Eagles, there's this big misconception about it. I don't think the number of attempts Jalen has is a problem. I think it's the efficiency of those attempts where I think the problem emerges. Where, there are missed plays, right? Jalen threw 20 times against the Rams last week, which is what I actually predicted. And there was a couple of missed opportunities. You had the play to Smitty that, almost was made, but then negated due to penalty. Granted on the Rams, but still. You had the play to AJ, which also, was dropped. And it's like those are just plays that get erased, and then you look back at the box score and it's like, oh, the passing game barely did anything. It's like, yeah, well, here's a couple of plays that they missed on. Like, those are the shot plays. Those are the plays that can eat up chunk yardage. Instead of it just not necessarily being good. The problem is Jalen is being fairly efficient with his passes. It just hasn't been consistently efficient. My X factor in this game is Bobby Wagner, the veteran defensive linebacker. He's been a very good player, and he was a huge reason why the run game got stuffed in the second half against Washington. He was making all the calls, reading out the plays, and he was dictating that defense. He's a veteran. He's seen everything. He knows what's coming. The Eagles have to put him in tough conflict as he tries to lead that defense. And that's easier said than done. And if you can handle him, then you will win this game. It's very simple. Again, this is a Commanders defense that last week really won their game because of the takeaways they got. The good news is the Eagles don't really don't turn the ball over at a very high clip. They really haven't for like a majority of the season. So as long as they protect the football and don't give Jaden Daniels chances, they'll be fine. And I think that they have the tools here to take advantage of this defense. Moving on, Commanders offense and the Eagles defense. And my first point, contain, and for the last time for everyone in the back, contain. You must contain Jaden Daniels. And that's easier said than done, but you have to. The last matchup, the Commanders really didn't have a great run game. Brian Robinson fumbled twice. Nobody really broke off any significant runs. Jaden Daniels was the one who was breaking off the runs. He had that scramble on 4th and 11. It just felt like no one could tackle him. And he's going to be that kind of a quarterback. He's playing at an extremely high level. He isn't really showing much weakness. You're going to have to find ways to contain him. You cannot let him win this game with his legs. You cannot let Washington get into favorable third down situations. You just can't. Because they're really, really good at converting on 4th down. And even more importantly, not only are they good at converting on 4th down, on drives that they do, they might have a much higher touchdown percentage rate. It was mentioned a lot in the Week 16 matchup. And we saw that. On the drives where he did, they usually ended up scoring a touchdown. It's not even like they end up scoring points, they score touchdowns, and that's huge in this league. This is not an offense that is going to be held down. You're not going to be able to hold them to, less than 20 consistently. It happened towards the middle of the season when Daniels wasn't as healthy, but they really haven't. This is not an offense that you expect to blow out. I mean, they haven't been blown out since week 1. Now, there's a couple games that they made the game more respectable towards the end that they lost, like against the Ravens and against us, week 11. But for the most part, this is not an offense that's going to get blown out, and a big reason why is the way Jaden Daniels plays. So keying in on him, containing him, not allowing him to win this game with his legs is going to be huge for the Eagles to win. The next big point, how big of a loss is Sam Cosmi? I think this matters a lot, and I don't think it's getting a lot of traction. He was their best offensive lineman. This is not a great offensive line. They're really good run blockers, not really good pass blockers. You can get to Jaden Daniels, you can sack him. The Eagles have done that this year. But the big thing is with him, he was very good against Jalen Carter. And you've seen Jalen Carter in these playoffs be an absolute game wrecker. We saw it against the Rams. We saw it even against the Commanders the last time. He forced a huge fumble on Brian Robinson. He is that kind of a guy. And their backups are nowhere near that caliber of player. Now, one of two things is going to happen here. Either they're just going to double Jalen Carter every play. In that case, other guys have to win their one-on-ones. Or if Jalen Carter gets singled up against, someone who's not Sam Cosmi, obviously, he's gonna have to win those reps. My X factor is Scary Terry. I think really the X factor is Jaden Daniels, but I don't really like saying the quarterback's the X factor because for pretty much every team, he's the X factor. But Scary Terry. The first matchup, the Eagles shut him down. The second matchup, he honestly didn't have a huge game, but he got Quinyon on a big play for a touchdown. Really the only time all season I've seen Quinyon burned for a touchdown. He's given up touchdowns here and there, but he hasn't been absolutely burned. He's 5 yards behind the receiver. I definitely think they will try to take shots at Terry. He's a huge part of their offense. He's the engine that goes. Their receivers are good, not great guys. Like De'Ami Brown's really stepped up. We saw what OZ and Jamison Crowder did to us last time. Zach Ertz is a solid tight end. But for the most part, Scary Terry's the engine that makes that offense go behind Jaden Daniels. And if he gets going, it's going to be a tough game. And the Eagles know from day one that Terry has been in the league how good he has been against this team. The last thing I'm going to bring up is special teams. So number one is the battle of field position here. If you guys remember, in week 16, a big problem of the game is both teams were breaking off returns. The field position for both teams was really, really good in the game. There just wasn't a lot of touchbacks. That has to change, because the last thing you want to do is give Washington, an offense this good, a lot of favorable field position. You can't do it. So you have to be able to manage the field position well there. Number two, you cannot afford missed kicks or extra points. And really my last 2 points have to deal with Jake Elliott as a whole, but we saw against the Rams, those two missed extra points almost cost us. He missed an extra point against the Packers. This is an offense that can score at will very quickly and very easily. And if you're leaving points off the board because of kicks, this is going to be a tough matchup. And my last point is, how much do you trust Jake? The weather is going to be a lot more favorable in this game. It's not going to be snowy, so he's not going to have bad conditions. There are going to be wind gusts. That is something to pay attention to. But when you're thinking about it's 3rd down and 4 at the Washington 40, offensively, you've got to probably, at some point, you got to consider, do we go for this, or are we trying to, if we don't get it on 3rd down, do we go for it on 4th down? How aggressive are we on 3rd down? So then we can set ourselves up either with a favorable 4th down opportunity or a field goal kick. Because, especially with the wind gust, do you trust Jake Elliott to make your kicks? Again, we lost the last time to Washington by 3 points. Jake Elliott missed a field goal in that game. Admittedly, it was a long one at the end of a half, but he still missed it. Those points mattered, right? It all adds up. So, for that reason, this is a tough matchup. I think it's probably the toughest matchup the Eagles have had in the playoffs, because this is the best offense that they've faced so far. A lot of the reasons why the Eagles have won their games in the playoffs, controlling time of possession, controlling their opponent, getting turnovers, or takeaways, I should say. The Commanders really don't do that. Now, I really do believe the Eagles will win this game. I do think this game will be close. It's going to be an intense game. It's going to be a division rivalry. And I'm really excited. And I hope, when I come back to you guys, Sunday night or Monday, and I do the post-game ponder, we're talking about this team going to a Super Bowl. But for now, hope you guys enjoyed being nerdy for the birdies. This has been Bird Brain. Fly, Eagles, fly, and see you around.